Content warning, this episode contains discussion of murder and rape. It also includes some profanity.
Today, we continue our look at the life and career of Andy Baldwin, one of the two defense attorneys representing Richard Allen in the Delphi murder case. In the future, we'll be doing episodes on Brad Rozzi, the other defense attorney, prosecutor Nicholas McLeland, and Judge Fran Gull. It is our hope that these episodes will help us better know the people in the case, as well as help us all understand how the legal process works in Indiana.
This episode will focus largely on Andy's work in court. We'll hear about how he prepares, his courtroom style, and some of the cases he's worked on. The speakers will be Andy's peers, people who have worked with or against him in court. We will also hear from a woman whose husband was represented by Andy. That man was accused of murder, and just like in Delphi, there was a video of the alleged killer.
Tomorrow, we will tell the story of one particular case. It is the tale of Baldwin's team representing a young person accused of murder. That case came to a shocking conclusion that left many feeling outraged.
My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
We first connected while looking into the Burger Chef murders, an Indiana cold case. Together, we built a spreadsheet documenting hundreds of cases of restaurant-related homicides. That original spreadsheet gave way to our podcast, the Murdersheet.
Now we maintain that same research-centric, investigative approach as we look into all sorts of homicides, including unsolved cases, historical crimes, and, of course, restaurant murders.
We don't just chat about the headlines. Our podcast is a platform for our journalism. The Murder Sheet focuses on investigative reporting, thoughtful analysis, thorough research, and in-depth interviews. We're the Murder Sheet.
And this is the Delphi Murders. Andy Baldwin for the defense, Part 2, The Best I've Seen.
Andy Baldwin is now exclusively a criminal defense attorney, but that was not always the case. Here's Mitch Westerman, who worked as a legal assistant for Andy Baldwin.
And, he did all sorts of law. He did family law. I think he did some civil stuff, but, inevitably he was always saying how much the criminal stuff is the only stuff he really enjoyed.
Here's Johnson County, Indiana attorney Michael Auger.
He decided he's done with all of the civil stuff, and he was going to focus his attention on criminal trials and criminal work.
There were a few reasons why this may have surprised some people. For one, criminal defense work is hard. Here's Clark Waymeyer, who used to work in Andy Baldwin's office.
So I think, criminal defense in general, it's tough. It requires long nights. It's not well paid. I'll tell you that. It's not like Andy or any of those other guys are living high on the hog. But when you think about it, right, most people accused of a crime aren't rolling in money.
On top of that, a lot of people have a very low opinion of criminal defense attorneys. But people in the legal system don't believe that is fair. Here is Brown County, Indiana prosecutor Ted Adams.
A lot of people, I think, give defense attorneys a bad rap, and they ought not get one. I mean, everyone wants to trash on a defense attorney until you need one. You never know when the government is going to point the finger at you. And at that point, you've got to be courageous and defend your client against the government. And we ought to have defense attorneys. We need defense attorneys. We need defense attorneys to prevent the government from becoming all too powerful and pointing the finger at people without any type of ramifications for what they're doing. They need to be held accountable, and they need to be held to a standard.
A passion to protect people's rights does motivate Andy's defense work.
He very, very, very much in his soul believes innocent until proven guilty. Some of his passion is also just rooted in that and the fundamental rights that we get in America that are protected by the Constitution.
Some people were taken aback by the name Andy and his partners chose for their firm. They called themselves the Criminal Defense Team.
And I can remember there was some flack that he was taking just for the name, and people thought it was kind of hokey.
Here's Johnson County, Indiana prosecutor Lance Hamner.
I think it was surprising to everybody that a name like that would be forged because it's just an uncommon way to do it. Names of the partners usually come out, or it'll be the name of the lawyer and associates, Jim Smith and Associates. So to call it the Criminal Defense Team was very unusual.
But there was a reason for the name.
Andy's big thing from the start was like, I don't like just working alone. I don't like being in an office. I like the collaboration. I like, being able to go in this office and bump this off Mark, or go in and talk to Ted about, I've got this case, how should I talk to the prosecutor? What's your thought on this? And so he's super collaborative. And that goes just not for the other attorneys, but like paralegals and legal assistants that's worked with him, or the secretary. He's just a big advocate of like getting everybody's opinion, good or bad.
Here's Heather Saida, who worked at the Criminal Defense Team.
Yeah, we were very, very close family, very close knit, and everybody appreciated everybody's, their specialties. And
especially on cases queuing up for trial, we would have brainstorming sessions, usually in the law library or Andy's office. And back when I did it with him, we'd have a large, giant paper, those giant papers that you flip up, and we just take notes. We'd pause it, and we would pose some defense theories, some theories of innocence. We'd work them with the staff, because we always considered our staff to be, what a juror would hear. And we'd ask them, forget everything you know about this case, and let's test out this defense.
He wasn't too proud to have someone look at the case. Like I didn't go to law school. I wasn't I'm in no way a trained lawyer, but he took my advice and other people's advice in the firm, and wasn't too proud to hear what someone else's take was if it meant getting the best outcome for his client.
Here's Johnson County Attorney Carrie Miles.
It's an amazing place to work because you're going to be surrounded with people that are passionate about trying cases and are good at it and aren't afraid to call each other out. And that makes a defense, stronger. If someone in your team is willing to point out a weakness and then the other people can figure out how to overcome that weakness, you get blind to your case. And many of us have fought with Andy about, I'm going to do this in closing. And no, Andy, don't do that. That's dumb. Like, that's going to come off a different way. There's this back and forth, and he does surround himself with people that are willing to tell him he's crazy. And he is crazy, but he's good. He's crazy good. He's not afraid to try stuff in the courtroom. And often his co-counsel or people that are helping him on the case will say, no, you're not doing this. I didn't participate in this one, but there was a shot glass trial where he was going to do something with a shot glass. And
we had a case, and it was a case involving where the alleged victim, it was clear that the alleged victim had drank a lot of alcohol in this particular case. One of the themes throughout the case was the amount of alcohol that this alleged victim might have had throughout the evening. The case was, it was far enough away from Franklin that we were staying the night in a hotel. And one of the things that Andy and I discussed the night before closing arguments was we were trying to think of a way to really make the jury visualize like how much alcohol we were talking about here. And so Andy got the idea. He's like, why don't you go down to the hotel bar and see if you can get me. And I think that if you took all the statements together and the investigation and you kind of did the math on it all, it was something like 16 shots of alcohol that we were arguing that this is what was said here and this is what was said here. And if you match all that up, and that was drawn out through the cross exam of the alleged victim in the case. And so Andy was like, well, why don't you go down and see if you can get like 16 shot glasses? And I'm going to, as I start my closing, I'm going to set them one at a time. I'm going to set them one at a time on the stand in front of the jury as I'm giving my, my closing, and I'm going to do it slowly. And he's like, I'm going to be a little theatric about it just so they see, look how many drinks we're talking about and everything. So I was all for it. So I did it. I went down and they gave me the glasses and everything.
Andy had a further request for Mitch, one that involved his co-counsel, Kathy Perry.
Andy told me, he's like, don't tell Kathy that I'm going to do this because I don't think she'll be on board with it. And I was like, okay. And so I said, that's fine. And so we get into court the next day, and I'm sitting with him and Kathy, and you're sitting there and you're kind of vibing what's going on, and something about I can't remember right offhand, but I don't know if it was something. I don't know if we started right away with closings or whatever that morning, but something happened where I was like, I don't like the shot glass thing anymore. So, I mean, I'm talking, not very long at all. I mean, minutes, before he was supposed to go. I leaned over to Kathy and I said, Kathy, he's going to do the shot glass thing. And, she said, no, he's not. I said, yeah, he is. She's like, what do you mean? And I said, I have the shot glasses right here. And I pointed to him. She goes, no, he cannot do that. I don't feel good about it. And I was like, yeah, I kind of don't either. I was like, let's talk him out of it. So, I mean, he was literally going up, and we grabbed him and we're like, Andy, don't do the shot glass thing. And he's like, what? We're like, don't do the shot glass thing. Just do your thing. You're good. And he's like, okay, I won't do it.
I witnessed a trial where it was a rape allegation. I didn't participate in the trial. I witnessed it. And part of the argument is that she was screaming through a door and there were other people there. And Andy was trying to cause the jurors to understand that if she was screaming, people would have heard her. So he had one of his attorneys at the time, or a law clerk or someone, go out in the hall of the courtroom and on some kind of cue start screaming like, help, don't, stop, in just some obnoxious, crazy way. And everybody was like, that was ridiculous, Andy. But it made a point. It's hard because we're on a podcast here, but he's got big trial balls. I mean, he is not afraid to, he's not crossing the line. He didn't do anything wrong there. But for those of us that are a little more conservative in our approach, we're like, Andy, maybe that's a little much. It's not, because it's relevant, and here's why it's relevant. I mean, he'll fight you down on that stuff, but he'll also listen to those around him. That shot glass thing got nixed. And it was because he listened to somebody that he respected around him. I don't remember the story, but he does listen.
Andy is passionate about his work and puts in long hours at his office. Carrie learned this firsthand when she went to work for the criminal defense team.
The day that I started, I think, my parents raised me as someone that when you do a job, you don't half-ass it, show up early, stay late, work hard. And I knew Andy knew that about me already, just from the years that he'd been around me practicing. But there was something about, Andy is taking me on now. He's going to give me a paycheck, and I'm not just his friend. I'm someone that is employed by him. So I got to the office very early that morning, and I had an upstairs office. and I don't think Andy expected anyone to be in the building. My upstairs office was between the upstairs bathroom where the shower was located and his office that he also lived in when he stayed there. I was sitting at my desk trying to figure out what time everyone was going to get there and, just get my bearings and get organized. And Baldwin walks around the corner from the shower. Oh, yeah, you guessed it. At least he was wrapped in a towel. He had a towel around his waist. And mind you, we'd known each other for 20-some years, and he's like a brother to me. And he paused, and I paused, and we had a, oh, hi moment. And, he was embarrassed, and that really lasted for just like a second, because then we just started talking about, hey, I think I'm going to put you on the such and such case. Literally, he stayed there with the towel wrapped around his waist. I forgot about that because we started talking about a case. And then there was a moment where he realized, like, oh, I should probably go. I don't. And I probably made some really rude comment about, I don't want to see your junk or something. And then he went off and got dressed.
Hey everyone, it's Anya and Kevin.
We're both longtime true crime obsessives. That's why the Murder Sheet emphasizes research, interviews, and digging for the truth. We've led the national media on major crime stories, providing scoops and exclusives to our audience. We've run interviews with some fascinating figures, and have more planned ahead. We're proud of the work we do here, and we are so thankful to all of our listeners for making it possible.
If you really enjoy this show and are looking for an opportunity to get even more content, consider joining our Patreon. For $5, you basically get 2 extra episodes a month. What's more, these aren't just any episodes. They're 2 very cool live episodes. You can join in and watch live, weigh in with questions or comments, the works. Those episodes tend to be much looser in terms of our style and format. We'll go behind the scenes on our journalistic process, tell anecdotes about some of the wild things we've seen while reporting, give you our opinions, and try to answer all of the questions you've always wanted to ask us about the cases you care about.
By joining, you'd also be helping directly support us. Podcasting is a tough business for independent voices. The Murder Sheet does not belong to a network, and we're not owned by a mega corporation. So we really appreciate our Patreons for helping to support us.
If you're interested, just go to patreon.com/murdersheet and subscribe at the $5 level. Again, that's patreon.com/murdersheet. When it comes to actual trials, Andy Baldwin has a perspective that is not necessarily shared by every lawyer.
Most lawyers say that, your opening statement really isn't worth anything.
I hate an opening statement. Andy and I would go round and round about that because he is adamant that an opening statement could make or break a case. And I'm like, dude, it's a statement. You're not even allowed to argue. You have to say what you think the facts are going to be. And he says, that's how you tell the story to the jury. And if they believe in your story and they trust you, as the evidence comes out and it comes out to match your story, you're going to win. He's probably right, but I hate opening.
His openings are, bar none, the best I've seen from the defense bar. And as a prosecutor, I've tried dozens of cases. I've seen many, many different defense attorneys, gone up against many defense attorneys, and by far his opening statements are the best. He has a theme. He'll stick with it. He'll pound. He communicates like no other to a jury. And he's such a personable, because we picked a jury, and so the jury will have spent hours with both of us. And with Andy, and he's personable, and he'll have built a rapport with them. And now he's going to go up and give a theme, and he's going to deliver. He's going. I call it. We're promising. Hey, this is what we're going to show you. You're writing that check, and you try to get the jury interested, and that check's going to be cashed. And so he's a master at giving an excellent opening with a theme, and then promising the jury something that they're going to want to be listening for, and be listening for, and then can check off their list, because that builds rapport, it builds trust. And again, as a defense attorney, you're always thinking there's some distrust there. They think I'm going to come up here and work on, give him some shenanigans and some smoke and mirrors. Andy never comes across that way. He's authentic and genuine, and the jury he'll have built that rapport with the jury so that when he gives that opening with the theme and he makes those promises, if you will, writes those checks, they're going to be satisfied that he comes through on whatever he's told them he's going to come through on. He'll also, one of his things that he's taught me to do, I like to bait them on a surprise because you want some anticipation. You want them, our concerns, your jury's going to fall asleep or get bored. You want them to anticipate some things. So you want to promise them some surprises. Hey, I want you to, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to, pay attention. What happens when I ask this of this witness? Something that's anticipatory.
And I just came back here to work at the prosecutor's office under the new administration. I came back here a little early in November. So what is this, March? I've been back a few months. And last week was my first jury trial here. And in honor of Andy Baldwin, I tried the case with another lawyer, and I said, I'm taking the opening. And not because I wanted to, but because I heard this little bird in my head. Andy Baldwin says the opening is where you tell the story. And prosecutors are classically not good storytellers. They're more methodical and mechanical. And because I come mainly from the defense side, I decided, okay, I'm going to do the Andy Baldwin. And I sent him a text. I'm doing the freaking opening because of you. I don't enjoy opening. But yes. And it's rubbed off, apparently, because I did it.
How did it go for you?
We won. I don't know if it was because of my opening, though. I really don't.
Andy also has an unusual approach to preparing for cross-examinations.
I espouse to a lot of Andy's trial prep. You talked about the chapters and the chapter seeds. Has anybody filled you in on his way of preparation where...
A little bit. We'd love to hear more.
So I wasn't there when the chapter seeds were born. That's another colleague and friend of ours, Mitch.
We asked Mitch to explain the chapter method.
It literally just starts on a very smaller scale. I mean, he actually calls it the chapter seeds, where, there are these seeds of thought that, okay, whatever the issue might be, and we're talking about, you're taking the case as a whole and you're breaking it down into these little moments or thoughts. And, those are the seeds. And then from the seeds grow the individual chapters. And so, as the process goes down the line, he might, at the very beginning, he might have, 50, 100 chapters, depending on, and I'm talking like this might be specific to, say, the lead detective of a case. So he knows he has to cross-examine this lead detective. He might have 100 different chapter seeds, and then he'll organize those into individual chapters to where, he'll have at the end, maybe he'll pare that down to 40 or 50. And he literally writes, he writes the head of the chapter on a sheet of paper at the top. And then those are his chapters, and he organizes those literally one on top of another. If it's the day of the cross exam, he organizes them in the way that he thinks he's going to actually physically do the cross exam. And then, depending on how the direct examination goes, that's why I love his method, because it's so able to be thought of, on the fly. So if the prosecution is really hammering something in direct exam, or say the lead detective says something, Andy can find that chapter, write what they said, and then he can. And so it's kind of interesting if you watch him in a trial, he's literally sitting there at the table, and he'll be shuffling his papers around, and he's literally on the fly, like adjusting his cross-examination in real time.
When you prep a trial with him, or when you sit next to him at a trial, there's the mad scientist look. His yellow papers are all over the place. He knows where they are. He knows what they say, and he knows how to arrange them.
Since Andy does not have a formal outline for his cross-examinations, he can be far more flexible than other attorneys. If most attorneys approach their cross-examinations like an outlined novel, Andy seems to see them more as a choose-your-own-adventure story. This can result in him taking courses others just don't see coming.
And there was a case, this was in Johnson County, actually, I believe. He even during opening said, look, I'm going to attack this police officer. I'm going to go after him. And so if you don't think that you can be on a jury where I'm going to go after this guy, please tell me. And he set it up from the day before, like, I think this was a horrible investigation and I'm going to attack this guy when he gets on the stand.
Andy spent days getting his cross-examination ready.
The next day comes, the officer takes the stand, and Andy says, if you just admit right now that you conducted a horrible investigation and you screwed up the case, I will sit down and not ask you any more questions.
The guy was like, yeah, I messed it up. I messed it up badly. And Andy sat down.
He sat right back down. Andy rested. And as you can probably guess, right, our client was found not guilty.
We've talked about trial preparation and what Andy's peers think of him. But let's look at things from a different perspective. Here's Ashley Hubbard.
So my husband was accused of murder. I really don't believe that he did it. He says he didn't do it.
Ashley's husband, Michael, was accused of setting a man named Robert Head on fire inside of a vehicle. There was a video showing a man getting out of the vehicle just before the fire began. Police believed that man was Michael. He was then charged with murder.
He got a court-appointed attorney, and the court-appointed attorney pretty much just wanted him to take an 18-year plea and say that he did it, and I wasn't okay with that, and he wasn't okay with it. The court-appointed attorney had no interest in even looking into anything. I felt like he pretty much went and had lunch, so to say, with the prosecutor, and they were like, oh, yeah, it's him, he did it, we're going to get a plea out of him, and we're going to go with that. I kind of feel like because we're from a small town in North Vernon, and, my husband and myself don't have the best past, but we've been doing good for years, and we don't have the greatest reputation, and I felt like they didn't want to look into it, in my opinion. They're all friends around here. I felt like he just wanted to close this case and get it over with. So I went on the hunt for a better lawyer, and actually a friend of mine told me about Andy, and when I called him, he looked into the case and he thought it was interesting. He looked into everything. He done interviews, he contacted witnesses, anybody that I felt like he needed to speak to, he would speak to them. Any kind of evidence that I felt like I had, I could give to him, and he would say, we can use this, we can't use this, this is good, this is not so good. He kept in contact with me. He gave me a lot of hope, honestly, because my husband was looking at life without parole.
Andy worked the case hard. He started finding problems with the evidence against Michael.
He pointed out a lot of things that I was trying to tell the court-appointed attorney, like little things. Like there was a video, for instance, in my husband's case, that was not a very good picture. You could not say that this is or isn't anybody. And they were just like, well, that person has a beard, so it has to be him. And the court-appointed attorney wasn't going to look into it any further. And I watched that video numerous times, and like me, I've been with my husband for 15 years, and I know that my husband doesn't leave the house without a hat on. Like, he's balding, and he's very self-conscious about that. And that was one of the biggest things that I noticed in that video, is that the person in that video didn't have a hat on. Now, you couldn't make out any tattoos or any good facial, like, you couldn't really say that this is or isn't anybody. But that person didn't have a hat on. And Andy Baldwin believed me. And he really fought for us.
The prosecution offered a deal.
We did end up taking a plea deal, because if we would have went to trial and something did go wrong, it would have been a life without parole. And taking a plea deal, he can be home in a year with us and move on with our life. that was not Andy's choice. That was our choice. He wanted to take it to trial, and sometimes I regret us making that decision because I do believe that we could have beat it. But having kids so small and not having the best reputation in this town, and it was a risk. And it was just not worth the risk to me.
Now that we know more about how Andy works in court, and even what his clients think of him, we will wrap up our series of episodes on him tomorrow with a look at one of the more controversial cases he has been involved with in recent years. It involves one teen killing another, and it ended up being adjudicated in a way that left many feeling shocked.
Thanks so much to everyone who talked to us for this episode.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.